Oh, over here? 50 metres?
So Paddles and Gold, they were born at the same time, and their mothers hung out together for the time where they were in a 3-year association. And Gold's mum just had a new calf in January, so Gold had separated from his mum probably a couple months before that, and Paddles was still associated with mum. So we think that these are males because they form a tight diet. Seeing a dolphin for the first time in the water is always an amazing experience. And sometimes when they come over to the bow and they turn their head and they make direct eye contact at you, it's just a feeling that you can't describe. There's a connection there. They're checking you out just as much as you're checking them out and researching them. I recognise every individual within both of the Burrunan populations that we study. And I sometimes wonder when you have dolphins that repeatedly come over to the boat and jump on the bow and check you out, whether they go, oh, there's Kate again.
Yep, just up over here. Oh, yeah.
You can go out there and they might be leaping out of the air or surging through the water. They're incredibly intelligent and they're just a lot of fun.
Over the last 2 years, we have observed a change.
To think that we could lose that just by our careless actions almost feels like a crime to me.
Gippsland Lakes is an estuarine system in that it has input from freshwater sources and also input from an oceanic source. The Burrunan dolphins are part of the Tursiops genus, so these are oceanic species. So resident dolphins remain within a water body across all seasons, across multiple years, and they're essentially habituated to these areas. It's quite interesting that the dolphins have set up a residency in an estuarine system, which is quite changeable between freshwater and saltwater. But the dolphins have evolved to have a skin that is made for saltier conditions. So when we see a freshwater input event and the dolphins are remaining within a freshwater system, it changes the skin structure and it can break down that skin structure.
Dolphins are topwater predators, so they can be an indicator of the entire ecosystem health. Essentially, whatever is happening in the ecosystem at a low level can manifest itself in these animals.
When we encounter the animals, we undertake a focal follow, which is a rigorous scientific method for observing the dolphins and their behaviours. You might have things like a travelling group behaviour, like some surges or some leaps, or some high leaps even if we're lucky. If we look at the group as a whole, what behaviour are the majority of them undertaking? We also collect fin ID information using our cameras to identify information on the individual dolphins that are a part of the pod. And we also use the GoPro to observe underwater behaviours to better understand what's going on below the surface.
In 2006-07, we had a pulse event with freshwater input and heavy rainfall into the Gippsland Lakes. These pulse events happen quickly and there's a burst of that freshwater input. And then the system can recover. The first indication that we started to see that there was population-wide impacts were the presence of skin lesions on the dolphins. We wanted to have a look at the impacts of these lesions as we'd never seen them before. Dr. Duignan was working here in Australia at the time, and so we were undertaking necropsies in the place that he was working and collecting these samples to be able to better understand what the impact of these lesions were and in fact what the cause of them was.
The beauty of dolphin skin when you're looking for lesions is that they don't have hair, they don't have fur. So everything that's happening with the skin is immediately apparent. You can look at a dolphin skin from a distance and tell whether there's something wrong with it. What's seen initially is that the skin will go from being the normal grey-blue color in a bottlenose dolphin to a very dull, lusterless grey color. So what happens is that the cells lose their ability to keep water out. They balloon out. Then that will progress to the cells actually rupturing, and that will leave holes in the skin, or effectively ulcers. When that happens over a significant part of the body, you get to a scenario like in people who have been severely burnt, like in house fires or car fires, where a lot of their skin has been lost. And once that happens, you lose the barrier for protection against infectious agents from the environment, but you also set up a scenario where you lose body fluid, and that's probably the most significant thing. Then we had to look into all the factors that were common and eliminate all the things that were known to cause skin disease, that could have caused these skin diseases. So we started with the most common things. With a skin disease like that, you think viruses. We started looking for all the known viruses that could possibly cause this, including things like herpes viruses and pox viruses, and came up with nothing. Then it was on to the next things, bacteria, fungi, combinations of these. And again, there was nothing that was a common factor between all of the dolphins. So then that brought us back to, well, what happened in the environment? We had two populations of dolphins that had been studied for long periods of time. Individual dolphins were known, their movements had been tracked. They also lived in relatively small, confined habitats. The other factor that was very important to know is what the chemistry, the physical characteristics of the water were.
Okay, going down?
Yeah. We're at 3, we're at 3.4, so you should be able to sit at 3. Here on the Gippsland Lakes, we are taking water quality measures to have a look at things like salinity and turbidity and dissolved oxygen across 22 locations.
Clear.
So this shows us the different haloclines, so each of the different water lines that are in there. So the fresh water should sit on the top and salt water on the bottom. So what we're doing is having a look at how these lines are forming, and we try and take the reed, the bottom reed, so that it's underneath the halocline. So we're getting that salt, the sort of salt water element, if there is any, or if it's just like this where there's lines all across the board.
Both of the bodies of water in Australia had long-term monitoring programs where monitoring stations were set up in the water at various locations before, during, and after these freshwater incursion events happened. So we had that data. And then we had recovery of the carcasses immediately after the dolphins died, so that full documentation of the pathology could be carried out.
When freshwater enters a estuarine or saltwater environment, the mixing of those two water columns doesn't actually happen immediately. That fresh water actually just sits on the top of the water and it doesn't mix with the rest of that more saline bottom water. That's because salty water is heavier than fresh water. It's what we call a salt wedge. without any extreme winds or any other action that might physically create that mixing. The mixing of those waters is very slow. For the dolphins, they can't just hang out down in that salt water down the bottom. They've got to breathe. So they've got to come up through that fresh water and spend a bit of time in that fresher water as well.
What happened in the Gippsland Lakes in Victoria, there was a period of 10 years with almost no rain. So the salinity in those lakes went from an average of 15 to 17 parts per thousand up to 25, even 30 parts per thousand over a 10-year period. So the dolphins got more and more acclimated to full salinity water. And then between the last week of June, first week of July, fresh water got dumped over a 10-day period, very heavy runoff into the 7 rivers that flow into this system. And all of a sudden, the lakes changed from being brackish to almost full-strength seawater to freshwater lakes. That gave the dolphins no time to adjust to it or to find saline refuges that they could have escaped to get away from the fresh water. And the skin disease developed within weeks of this change in water quality happening. When we finally pinned this disease down on a change in the environment and a change in the water quality, that was the eureka moment. A cause for all of these problems in these different areas is climate change.
Climate change is an impact that humans are having on the environment that causes a change in the environment above and beyond what would be expected without our input. So we have a baseline climate measure, and things like CO2 is causing a blanket, which is increasing temperatures. What this is actually doing is creating environmental change in that we are having more extreme events like bushfires, like flooding events on a more regular basis, and it is changing our climate, changing our ecosystems, and changing our species compositions. La Nina has now been going on for 2 years, a much longer time than a normal La Nina cycle would go. That's increasing the rainfall into particularly the Gippsland Lakes catchment, which is increasing freshwater and terrestrial runoff into a very closed estuarine system.
This is a small, isolated population that is critically endangered, and so if there is a mass loss in numbers, then that could affect their long-term survival. Unfortunately, this is not also limited to our wonderful Burrunan dolphins. We're seeing freshwater skin disease and lesions in dolphin and cetacean populations all around the world.
Dolphins are the indicator species that tell us that there's a major problem happening. Now, most people have been hearing about climate change for a number of years now, and everybody has got to the point of thinking, well, this is too big, it's beyond me, I can't do anything about this. If anything, COVID has shown us that things can change.
Establishing the Marine Mammal Foundation is really important to me because it is having that core research, that real value in science, and communicating that into policy and management. If people don't know about these things, then they can't help and they can't change or they can't get involved.
More out here. Some of the ways you can help us at the Marine Mammal Foundation is citizen science-based activities, just like logging a sighting. If you see dolphins out there in the water, do let us know. We obviously can't be out there all the time, But by having your sightings, we can get a better understanding of their distribution patterns.
The reason that we monitor these predominant behaviours and individual behaviours is so that we can better understand how the dolphins are interacting with our environment and then pass that information on to enforcement bodies and conservation bodies so that better decisions can be made about how we manage our marine environments.
The Marine Mammal Center in Sausalito is the largest marine mammal hospital in the world. And I feel very fortunate to be the director of pathology here, and it gives me a thrill every day to come in here and know that I'm helping to contribute to understanding how the health of our oceans are changing and how it's impacting the marine mammals, but how ultimately it's also impacting us.
Silhouettes of you are like a taunt. Never really know just what you want. With you I don't ever feel calm. I can feel the sweat inside my palms. Play with me like cats and a string. You don't understand the pain it brings. You don't ever wanna give me wings. You don't ever wanna set me free. You know I'm addicted to you, and it's twisted. You've been gifted with the evil voodoo. Got me coming back for more, even when I've been screwed. Dolls full of pins, pierce my heart straight through. I got issues in my head. I like you in my bed, but you keep me on red. Oh, everything is like a test. I better not text or I'll come off desperate.
But if I lay down and I play dead and I stay dead, baby, you'll get sick of being the monster out of my head, under my bed, thinking something out of my nightmares, standing right there. But if I lay down and I play dead and I stay dead, then will you get bored of killing?
So if I play dead, will you regret everything that you did, that you said? I don't think you understand what you're doing, and my heart's black and blue from the bruising. I feel like when I'm with you I'm losing. I feel like you think that this amusing, sitting there gaslighting and confusing. Was it me? Is it me? Am I deluded? I'm the one who's always sorry, the conclusion. Even though I offer all of the solutions, I wish you loved me like I love you, it's stupid. When I'm alone with you I never feel lucid. I wish I wasn't struck by Cupid. I wish when I first saw you I knew this.